Alright, next up we are going to do a copper headstock. For the copper guitar I did, I want to get that same matching copper patina on the headstock of a guitar neck. So I've got a sheet of 8mm copper from Basic Copper, and we're going to get this piece prepped the same way. We're going to tape the back with some blue tape, non-stick tape. We're going to sand it down with 320 again, and then we're going to come back with some sawdust, salt, and ammonia. So we're going to take the same container before, put a little bit of salt in, put a little bit of ammonia in, mix this in, and then get some sawdust, a little bit more salt. And the sawdust here is key to getting the same result. I learned that. I did 2 additional sheets here this time. I'll show you. This is very fine grained sawdust. I had something from my drum sander and figured I could do it the same way since I've been mainly working with oak, and this didn't work out at all. This is really finely packed sawdust now, and when I push it down onto the copper, I'm going to get a completely different patina than before. I let the patina sit a little bit longer than last time, and it comes back looking significantly different. So we'll cover it up, let it sit for about 12 hours. Last time I let it only sit for about 6. And I've got a significantly different result. Don't see any copper really, but you see the blue and the black from that. And I cleaned it off. Didn't look any better. It's like that does not match the body at all. So we'll do it again. And that didn't work at all either. This time I went with a little bit less salt, and I got more of a blue reaction. So what I did is I went back and took the shavings from a piece of oak, and I had much, much larger shavings, and that's what I used on the body. And so I took my spoke shave and created larger shavings than actually sawdust, and I put the shavings onto the piece of copper, and I get pretty close. So we mix this up with ammonia and salt again, and I watched the video, referenced my own work again, and I could see I put a little bit of salt on the top, and then I take the shavings versus sawdust and drop that back on. So this is same white oak. First one I did was really, really fine sawdust from my drum sander, and then this I actually took my spoke shave and made some shavings. And then this was only 6 hours later. I wanted to see what it looked like, and it's pretty darn close. So if you're going to try and do a body and a headstock matching, you need to make sure that you've got the same material, same process, or else the headstock and the body won't match. So I'm pretty happy with this here. It's pretty close. Once I dry and wash it off, it'll be pretty close. So here are the 3 different pieces. The middle piece is the first one, which was really fine sawdust. The second one was a little bit more salt, and then the third one is the one I'm going to glue on. So we'll peel the tape off, sand it down so it adheres a little better with 320 again, roll out any of the creases, tape off the neck headstock. So this is a maple neck with copper inlays. So I've got side dots that are copper, and I've got fret markers that are copper as well. So we'll come back with that TC20 glue, clamp this on, let it sit, make sure I get even clamping pressure. And I've got a trick for the part by the nut, and I'll show you that here in a second. I get a little bit of foam and a dowel rod, and I glue it in with the pressure so I get that flat. So we'll clamp up the headstock flat. I've got a gym mat. I cut it in half and then took that dowel rod and pushed down, and it glued it pretty tight so I meet the curve. We're going to get some tin snips, shears, whatever you want to call them, and we'll cut off as much as I can here. The TC20 sort of creates a real hard edge, which is nice. So we'll cut this and then come back with, I don't even know what this is called, sort of an awl or scraper with a curved blade. It's like an X-Acto knife with a curved blade. I got this kit from Menards for $10 a couple months ago, and I haven't used it. But I just take that curved blade and I sort of work my hand pulling down, cutting the copper. I was going to take it to the router still, but I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't want it to tear the copper out. But I just used that sort of pulling down motion, which cleans out the copper pretty nicely. And then I have the tape there, which protects my neck from any mess. So we'll just wiggle off some of the pieces, and you can see that motion of pulling down to pull it clean. If I pulled it up, it would sort of lift the copper off. Didn't want to do that, so just have this sort of slow pulling down motion, which cuts it nicely. So then to do the tuner holes, I'm going to take my drill bit, just drill out a starter hole, and then take a reamer and ream out the copper. So that glue turns a little bit sticky if it doesn't adhere to two pieces of something, and just clean it out, ream it out, and I'll be all set to take this then to the router and get a nice clean route and clean edge. So I'm going to take this over to my bigger table router. I've got a little bit longer of a in-feed and out-feed section here, and this is a bottom trimmed bit, so flush cut bottom bearing bit. And we'll just run this on the outside, make sure the edge is nice and perfect and clean. And that was it. Just 2 quick passes and be done. Back to the main bench then, and we're going to start sanding. So that edge is a little bit rough towards the nut, and we'll get some files and some sandpaper and try and file this off. The sandpaper didn't work all that well, so the file works a little bit better. These are some Nicholson files, which are incredibly awesome for working on this copper. So I've got all my different files out here and trying to figure out what's the best way to get that edge. I didn't want to route. I didn't have this on my template. I just wanted to freehand it. And so we'll just get the Nichols files and just slowly go back and forth and get that edge clean. So I wanted to make sure I wasn't nicking the board at all. So I'm going pretty slow and coming back with a bunch of different files for each little section, making sure I've got no burrs and making sure I don't actually nick the neck. So that's why I'm doing more of a pull down motion here and coming across the side. So then for the inside of the B, I got some 80 grit sandpaper and I'm just sanding down that edge and making sure it's clean. And it's wrapped around that same dowel that I had cut and used before. And we'll do it towards the nut as well, where I've got a little bit of work to do. So then where the nut wraps over, I had a little bit of copper left over. And I'm taking that Nicholson file, whatever, and just kind of pushing it towards the rest of the fretboard and cleaning it off. If I had pushed it towards the headstock, I would rip off the piece with the glue. And here I'm taking that motion, going across, and it keeps the copper on the headstock and it doesn't pull it off. So I was really careful here to make sure that this looks right. So we'll just file this down and make sure it's looking perfect. And it's nice to have all the tools and the workbench here to do this quickly. So we'll come back with some 320 grit sandpaper and then sand all the edges clean, make sure everything is nice across the neck. Make sure those edges are smooth. So we'll start with the files, then we'll move to the sandpaper and clean up all the edges. So this is 320, and then the grit here is 600. And I had one mark I needed to clean up right there. But get this all nice and smooth with 600 grit. And then we will come back with some wipe-on poly and finish this. So the same wipe-on poly that we use for the guitar body, we're going to put that on the full neck. So we'll do it on the headstock, fretboard, and we're going to leave those copper inlays the same and just put this wipe-on poly gloss all over the neck. We're going to put on 3 coats. This is the first coat, and then we'll go ahead and assemble the guitar, and I'll show you that video completed here in the next couple days. So thanks for watching, guys. We will see you in the next video.